Name the play. Romeo, Romeo, where art thou, Romeo? Exactly. Romeo and Juliet, very good. All right, how about this one? If music be the food of love, play on. Give me excess of it, that sufficing the appetite may sicken, and so die. 12th night, very good. All right, how about this one? Final one. This was the noblest Roman of them all. Yeah, Julius Caesar. Correct. Right. They are great works from the man himself, William Shakespeare. A phenomena around the world. The only problem is, he's a white male. Time for decolonisation, my friend. Shock horror. Englishman who's a white male writes about English experience, becomes a global learning tool for over 500 years, then gets cancelled by snowflakes. Instead of celebrating a world-renowned global British sensation, an icon who has ignited the flames of passion in scholars of English literature around the world from beyond the grave, instead of celebrating the birthplace of this legend, the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust in Stratford-upon-Avon have warned that the playwright could be seen as a symbol of British cultural superiority and his birthplace should be decolonised because of fears of white supremacy. For God's sake, it's nothing sacred. The Trust owns buildings linked to him in his hometown of Stratford-upon-Avon. I visited it when I was very young. And it owns archived material, including parish records of his birth and baptism. But it is now decolonising its vast collection to create a more inclusive museum experience. This includes exploring the continued impact of empire on the collection, the impact of colonisation on world history, and how Shakespeare's work has played a part in this. What in God's name does that actually mean? It's ridiculous. Basically, he was a white man writing stories about the time, and his excellent prose has been recognised for its brilliance. That's it. The complete works of Shakespeare is a classic for people of all creeds and colours. What's wrong with people? Look, here's my message to the Trust, who I suspect are all white. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's easy to look back at things out of context and complain about racism. But the truth is, I would argue, that if all you can see is his skin colour, ignoring the period that he wrote in and his environment at the time, ignoring the incredible positive impact his work has had on communities the world over for people of all skin colours, then the racism lies within you. Because frankly, I don't see it, and I didn't see it when I was learning about it. And right now, the only people creating it and enforcing it are you. He just helped me learn English, and I thank him for giving me the passion to become a writer and a journalist. Shakespeare was a hero who helped make English the most spoken language around the world, something that we have all benefited from. Why would anyone want to try to rewrite and reinterpret that legacy? This is not the first time, though, that Shakespeare has come under attack. Previously, the Arts and Humanities Research Council has said the disproportionate representation of the playwright has propagated benefits the ideology of white European supremacy, colonial inculcation, and the use of Shakespeare as a symbol of British cultural superiority and Anglo-cultural supremacy. White Anglo-centric, Eurocentric and increasingly West-centric worldviews that continue to do harm in the world today. What the hell does that even mean? A spokesperson from Shakespeare's Birthplace Trust has said, as part of our ongoing work, we've undertaken a project which explores our collections to ensure that they are accessible as possible. OK, here's one for the Trust. You want to measure the impact Shakespeare has had on people of all colours and racism? Here's a question. James Earl Jones, Lawrence Fishburne, Chiwetel Ejiofor. What have they all got in common? They've all played Othello. They're all black actors. Give your heads a wobble, you numpties, honestly. Before we get stuck into the debate, though, here's what else is coming up today. Can Labour, they have been accused of quietly shelving a law to strip EU judges of their power. Keir Starmer seeks a closer relationship with Brussels. Can they be trusted? We'll be asking whether they are betraying Brexit. Then for the Great British debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time to reverse the VAT hike on private schools? Chancellor Rachel Reeves is spending hundreds of thousands of pounds of our money in legal fees defending her controversial VAT raid on private school fees. We'll be debating that. I also have a poll up on gbnews.com asking whether Sir Keir Starmer is helping or hindering peace after he called out Russian President Vladimir Putin to agree to a ceasefire in Ukraine. Please cast your vote. That was actually up yesterday, but we put it up today because I'd love to hear the result. That is all on the way. As ever, send me your thoughts, post your comments, gbnews.com/your say. But we want to put a spring in your step and make it spectacular. Our latest Great British giveaway, your chance to win £17,777 of tax-free cash. It's on the way. But first, we have a chat with Krish Kandiah, director of the Sanctuary Foundation. Let's find out what he has to say. Come on, Krish, I'm absolutely right. What the hell are they talking about? Decolonisation of Shakespeare's birthplace.
Hi, Nana. Good to see you, and really encouraging to hear the way that Shakespeare inspired you. He inspired me to propose to my wife. I was reading Romeo and Juliet to her in the grounds of the Globe Theatre. So I'm with you. Shakespeare is a national treasure, in fact, a global treasure. But I wonder whether the Trust is just trying to do something helpful here. Just as an old building might check to see if it's accessible to disabled people by looking at some of the access points, whether there's too many steps in the way.
No, I'm sorry.
Maybe
that's not a fair comparison. No.
Trust,
no, I can't let you make that comparison. I hear you, but I've got to just no, because it's not a fair comparison, is it? This is making a building accessible to disabled. Hold on. Making a building accessible to disabled surely can't be compared to a trust looking back on history and then saying that this is enforcing white supremacy by promoting a birthplace of an absolute global icon who's inspired people of all colours and all walks of life.
He definitely has inspired people from all walks of life.
Even you.
Reading the other day that he inspired Nelson Mandela. Mandela would often quote Julius Caesar. This was his favourite line, apparently. Cowards die many times before their death. The valiant never taste of death but once. But maybe in the way that they're presenting the material in the museum, I don't think they are saying that they want to stop promoting Shakespeare, but they might want to check in the way that they're presenting it, whether their presentation is actually putting people off. For example, I went to visit an old building not long ago, and as you look around its hall, only pictures of white old men are on the walls. That might put women off and people of colour like me and you.
Well, it depends.
The building. But
it depends on the context. It depends on the context of those pictures. If you're in a building that is historically linked to these people, then you're not going to paint a few black faces in there just to make so that a couple of black people who come in aren't upset. The bottom line is this is the birthplace of somebody who lived in that era. This is the story of him in that era and the things he wrote in that era. You can't start putting some cultural appropriate things within there just so a few minority groups might go in and think, oh, I feel more comfortable now that there's some black people on the walls. That doesn't sit in my head. Does that sit in your head?
No one's looking at editing Shakespeare, as far as I can see, even from the press release.
Well, his birthplace.
But they're asking, is the presentation done in a way that's inclusive? So let's say they had a nice picture of some of the black actors that played Othello. That would make the place more welcoming without editing Shakespeare anyway. I think that's
that's down to them. Right? But that shows a lack of. That is their own vision, right? If they have created a place where they have not considered that there are black actors who played parts in Shakespeare plays, and they've only showed white people when there's more historical context, there's other things that have gone on who Shakespeare's inspired, then I would argue, as I said, that is their own racism. That is coming from them. It's not so telling us all that, hey, we've created this place and we haven't considered that Shakespeare has actually drawn and been recognised from people from all over the world shows that they are the ones who are myopic in their vision, not the people who Shakespeare's inspired.
I agree. I think we're agreed, Nana. I think the quest of decolonialisation can be unhelpful, but actually there are times when it might be useful. For me, decolonization is just looking accurately, openly, honestly at our past, and recognizing that every country around the world has both glory and ignominy in its history. And maybe in some of the ways that Shakespeare has been used, there might be ways that have been oppressive to other people. For a museum to look in and check that seems to be completely reasonable.
I think that you are kind of making it sound woollier and conflating it with other things to make it seem more acceptable. The reality is this, that if they have presented something in a way that kind of comes across as racist, and that's from their own minds and their own presentation, but that doesn't mean, but when they're now conflating it with decolonisation as though there is something that he may have done that may have been representative, which was racist, and he's projecting racism, I think that's where they're going, and I think that's very wrong indeed.
But think about the most controversial of Shakespearean plays, Merchant of Venice. Many of my Jewish friends would look at it and say, look, the way that Shylock is presented is anti-Semitic. It's a caricature. It plays into all the horrible anti-Semitic tropes about Jewish people being a certain way. And yet, even in that really difficult to read depiction, there's some beauty. In one of his most famous speeches, Shylock says, you know, am I not a Jew? Let me read it to you. I'm going to get it right. If you prick us, do we not bleed? If you tickle us, do we not laugh?
I remember.
If you poison us, do we not die? So even in a really complex character of Shylock, we recognise Shakespeare recognising humanity. So I don't think anyone's saying let's cancel Shakespeare, but let's present it in a context where people can wrestle with the difficult questions. You quoted Romeo and Juliet earlier. That's a play about social cohesion.
Exactly.
What do you do about two warring factions?
Exactly.
So I think we want Shakespeare to be as accessible to as many people around the world as possible.
But Shakespeare's
I think
works,
that's possible to do that in a way that isn't
what
racist.
they are doing is injecting a level of indoctrination into the minds of people that did not exist before. When I went to Shakespeare's birthplace, what an incredible place it was, I felt energised and impressed. I did not think, ooh, there's levels here that promote empire and colonisation and all of that. Now they are forcing me to look through the lens of empire and colonisation. They are placing things into my mind that did not exist before. And I think they need to be very careful with that, because you do not want to now indoctrinate a level of racism within something where it did not exist. And I think they need to be very careful.
I think we need to be careful, but I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's fair enough to look at how they're presenting him, and if they're doing that in a way that puts other cultures down, I've got a problem with that. But there's a way of celebrating the great treasure that he has brought to the world in a way that doesn't say he's the only person that anyone ever should be listening to. No one else has come anywhere near him. That's different, isn't it? Look, I'm about to watch the cup final, Liverpool versus Newcastle. I think Liverpool, my favourite team. I'm not going to say they're the best team that's ever existed. There's a way of celebrating my team in a way that doesn't put others down.
Right, well, I now know why Danny is not here today. No, he's Conservative, I'm teasing him. Listen, Chris Candiar, always a pleasure. I kind of disagree with you fundamentally on bits of that, because I think you're conflating and making them sound better than they are. I think that they're just tampering with something where they just really shouldn't be involved in. Leave Shakespeare alone, leave his birthplace alone, is the truth and reality of his life, and that's what people want to hear. Chris Candiar, always a pleasure. Thank you very much. He is the director of the Sanctuary Foundation. Thank you. Go on then, go and watch the football. Not you lot, stay here.